Aloha Maui Nui. Hey, this is Josh Porter here.
And Jason Burkhardt, how you doing? Little strains of Song B, also known as the best song, in honor of our special guest here today.
This is the SolarCoaster. We have a really special guest here. It's Henk Rogers. Welcome to the studio, Henk.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate you riding the coaster with us today.
We've been really psyched about this for a while, kind of ramping up. We got Solar Anthony over here on a mic too.
Aloha Maui, how we doing?
And Jonah Heller back there. Aloha, Jonah. Thank you.
Everybody?
Gary as well, and reportedly we may even have another fella coming in, your CTO Kyle Bolger, who's a real smart guy. He's been on the show past episodes.
Yep, it's a crowded studio today.
So we're going to jump right into it. We are the SolarCoaster, renewable energy themed talk show right here in lovely Maui County. You can see us at Fridays at 1:05 p.m. on KOI 1110 AM. We are also on some FM stations, 96.7 FM Central Maui, 96.5 FM West Side, 98.7 Upcountry. Call-ins are welcome throughout our shows. However, today we're going to hold them until later in the show, right?
Right. The last 15 minutes, if you would hold your calls. 242-7800 is the local number, 808-242-7800. And the statewide or national number, 1-866-982-7800. That's 866-982-7800.
We got a great website. You can check out our live streams and all kinds of other great jazz up there, podcasts, and I don't know, a whole bunch of other stuff.
All our previous shows, the link to the live stream that you can actually look and see us right now. Say hello to everybody. There we are. Everything is available at solar-coaster.com. Just click on solar-coaster.com, click on podcasts, you can get all our previous shows, or watch us live right now.
Absolutely. And we are sponsored by a great stable of companies, Maui Solar Project, Tabuchi Electric America, Sonnen Battery, and Pika Energy. Thank you guys for keeping us on the air.
Do appreciate you every day.
And very quickly, we're available on iTunes, various podcast platforms, iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And we're getting a little bit of play out there these days. We're just kind of exploring that space. So do check us out if you're a podcast person. Shall we jump right into our news and events, Jay?
Sounds like a plan. Okay, first thing up is why the solar tariff question in the U.S. could benefit other countries a whole lot.
What's this
more than the U.S. if we institute a tariff? How does that even work?
This is Forbes, right? And
this was the Forbes article, right? And the thought process goes as follows: if there is a tariff that is placed on panels and cells being imported into the U.S., then U.S. suppliers will not buy as much, right? We will cancel projects, and so that we won't be buying as much as a nation.
Mm-hmm.
That will cause a glut in manufacturing. There will be a lot of panels and cells available for other nations to purchase, and because of the glut, prices will drop, and it'll actually quicken adoption overseas.
That's the first time I have heard that one. Yeah, we saw this today, and I'm like, what on earth? How could you come up with that kind of an idea?
Well, it could make sense. And there's so much manufacturing going out. Everybody wants to sell their stock pile, so they'll compete with each other.
Okay.
Whether or not we're buying them at a discount price or not.
I'm not sure if I buy that. We're going to have to take a closer look at the Forbes article.
For sure.
But that is Forbes.com today, maybe about a couple hours ago. And we also got something from The Hill, right?
Yeah, this was really interesting. Energy Department study came out. This is a EIA, Energy Information Administration study that's issued every year about the growth of renewables, solar and wind specifically, in other nations. And the study was just released, and yet many of and it's treated as a forecast. I guess that's the big misconception. It's treated as a forecast. So, but all the a large number of the stats that they gave have already been achieved by other nations.
I mean, I kind of see this across the board. There seem to be these estimates of how renewable energy adoption across the globe is going to take shape, and then we just seem to be blowing them out of the water. You know, so that's to me, that's kind of like...
It's a massive underestimation, but the article is really interesting because basically, I mean, they did their due diligence. They went back to the architects of this particular study and say, where did you get your numbers? Because a simple Google search will tell you that they're not right.
Right.
But the methodology was actually pretty surprising. Well, we just figured that Brazil, for example, is one of the major offenders, right? What was published in the study, they've already achieved that and blown it out of the water. But we just said, well, you know what? They're not really going to make that, so we'll just shave 95% of their projection, and that'll be our forecast number. Like, I'm sorry, what? So you just pulled that out of your butt?
Okay. Well, I guess that's good news at the end of the day, right?
Sure. No, they're already way over over. The article is interesting, though, that there are two tipping points, and I kind of understood this, but they made it very clear. Two tipping points in the solar and wind kind of adoption rates is when the first tipping point is when solar pricing for a large farm competes with or outstrips building a new coal-fired plant, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's cheaper to build renewable energy,
is that parity? Basically?
yeah, parity of building a new plant. And so, for example, in China, 100 projects have already been canceled for new coal-fired plants because they can build solar cheaper. So why wouldn't you do that instead? The second one is the second tipping point for a massive avalanche is when it is actually cheaper to build a new solar plant than even continuing running the existing coal.
Oh, so you got a lifespan left in that peaker or in that plant or whatever it is, and it's like, it's better just to cut it off right now, forget the infrastructure.
Right, the running cost for that old diesel
renewables.
Generator in Malaya.
So are we are we seeing that? I wonder where we're at right now. I mean, geez, are we in a place where we're starting to see
exactly? That's why 100 projects in China are canceled. For coal-fired plants. Why would they want them? Because they can get the panels for the same money.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't really considered the economics of the systems in China, because I tend to think in terms of subsidies in the United States, right? So my math is always structured around that. Right. But in China, I mean, there's this massive ramp up, and so it must be at parity without subsidy, or is the government involved in subsidizing it? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm honestly not sure about the Chinese government's policies on renewables.
What do you think, Henk? Are we seeing some really good things across the world right now in terms of this issue?
Yeah, we in Washington have sort of like buried our head in the sand, and so we've lost the leadership in the world for going renewable, and China is picking up some of that leadership. I mean, it's a good thing. I don't particularly care who does it as long as it gets done. And China is a big source of carbon dioxide, and so if they're willing to make the change, and by the way, if they decide to make a change, they make a change. It's not like let some of us think about it and we disagree, blah blah blah. No, when the country says we're going to do this, we're going to kill all the flies in China, then everybody gets together and kills 20 flies, and all the flies are gone.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's going to happen with solar, and then they'll actually be able to see the sun again. I mean, like Beijing, you can't see the sun.
Right.
Yeah. And there are a lot of rich people in Beijing, and they're pissed off. Their kids can't see the sun. What kind of a place is that to grow up in? A place where you can't see the sun?
Yeah. I actually had that experience. I did a little work in sourcing between Japan and when I came to Maui to live, and I was working in China, and I got a real. It blew my mind, and especially all up and down the special economic development zone from Zhejiang all the way up to Qingdao. You just got gray skies in these cities, and it's just it's really stark what that feels like to not see the sun. It's kind of a
I think it would drive me nuts.
Yeah.
Vitamin D deficiency, I would go insane.
Yeah, the first time I went to Japan, I was living in Hawaii, and I went, and it was like Hawaii's Paradise, 1973, 4, something like that. Then I went to Japan. It's like my eyes hurt when I got off the plane. Mm-hmm. They just literally teared. So it was like near the Tokyo Bay. So it was Kawasaki. And there were all these factories still there. And it's all gone now. They've moved that stuff, or they've cleaned it up.
Right over to China.
So you can actually, you can actually breathe now. But back then, it was like eyes watering. And I grew up in New York, and we used to have smog in New York. So I mean, all of our cities had the same problem. It's just we dealt with it a longer time ago because we have more people that have a bigger voice.
So now is China's time, possibly, right?
It's definitely China's time. There are, again, like I said, there are a lot of rich people in China who are pissed off.
Yep.
Yeah, I know a couple of those guys. All right, well, let's take a look at national. It kind of ties right into what we were talking about. In green tech media, this Trump solar tariff decision is coming pretty soon. Jay, what do we got here?
Pretty soon in quotes. I like that. It's coming pretty soon. The deadline is the 26th. So we need to have something by the 26th. We had Abigail Ross Hopper on the show last week, and she thought that we would see a decision sooner. Like any day now. It's been a week and we still haven't seen it. So we literally have 5 more days.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty controversial talking point right now, and everyone's kind of on edge. There's a lot of concern. We've covered it a lot over the last couple of shows, Hank, and part of the discussion is a lot of this tariff actually could be priced into current module pricing we're getting out of the distributors. But at the same time, no one wants to compromise the progress of the United States, and of our renewable energy adoption. I know that what was she saying? Abby just put forward a letter directly to the White House, kind of petitioning to not get. She says it's counterintuitive. Somewhere the quote.
It's a personal letter sent from SIA President directly to President Trump, and it's basically going to the tariffs will actually kill American manufacturing jobs, the very jobs we all want to grow. That says,
so it's not going to
pretty
do
much
the job.
says it all. It's not the right choice.
But
I'm getting two things in my ear about the specifics of panels. Is one thing what you just said was that it's already priced in. They've been taking their profits a little bit on the down low there, and the module prices won't move. The other thing is that module prices are going to double.
Well, I mean, I think, she said something the other day. She goes, well, we asked her what was her take on it, because she's right there in D.C. She's lobbying for this effort. She goes, ask 100 people, get 100 opinions.
Right.
And it kind of speaks to the volatility of our political class right now. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. At the end of the day, it's in Trump's hands. I mean, that's terrifying. Sorry, Trump lovers.
Whether it happens or not, sure. But what our reaction is.
Yeah.
What manufacturing's reaction is, what our reaction is.
Sure.
We can control that.
Hank, you want to weigh in on this one?
Oh, yeah, totally. So, during the Obama administration, I was a big Obama fan, and the government was all making the right moves. We kind of sat back and said, well, the government's going to take care of us, and it's going to make this change, and all these good things are going to happen. And now we have a different administration, and so we on the ground are saying, you know what, the government's not going to help us on this one. We got to do this on our own, because it's not just us, but it's our children, our grandchildren. It's all the generations that are coming, and this is maybe our last chance to avert a serious climate change disaster. We just don't know. We're going into uncharted territory, and so for us to ignore the science of it is just it's criminal. Actually, is the way I look at it.
Criminal. Yes.
It's criminal, and so we need to. The people on the ground have redoubled our efforts. During the Trump administration, and I feel this all the way up and down. The scientists, the politicians who are on the right side of this issue, the people who are in the business of solar energy. We are fighting twice as hard as we have ever fought to make this all happen. And
that's encouraging.
And so that's good. So then what happens at the end of the Trump administration? We get a new administration, and then we will have positive and positive. We'll already have a tremendous amount of momentum on the ground. And then when the government chips in and says, like, okay, here's the rest of the story, I think we'll see a big tide of renewable energy coming in. You can't compete with fossil fuel.
It's just you can't compete against you can't compete against the math on this. It just works.
The math.
There's no getting around it. When you said that, I started to think of all the metaphors that are out there for this thing we're talking about, and I imagine Trump as a kind of, it's almost like a Trump vaccine. It's a vaccine for the country against fossil fuels. He's like, we got this kind of pendulum swing where we're going to go the opposite direction as soon as the administration's out, right? So this is pretty remarkable stuff. So we're going to hear about that issue of tariffs. I know that Abby from SIA has an alternative, the licensing concept she suggested. We'll see if that gets any play, but really it's anyone's guess right now, and it can come at any moment, maybe during the show.
Sure.
Maybe we'll see it pop in, and we'll know what's going on. So.
They should call in. Okay, next news item. This was actually really fantastic when it crossed my desk. Babcock Ranch in Florida is a planned community which is based off of solar, the entire town. How much?
Oh, 343,000 panels.
Yeah.
343,000 panels.
440
about 100
acres.
megs.
It's gigantic. But it's actually planned around all the technologies that we're always talking about. They have these little autonomous shuttles that actually drive around, and they are all electric. You can summon them with an app on your phone. Massive mobility increase for elderly and just safety issues. It's a really cool thing, and this town just opened. They got their first resident moved in this past week, and then their second resident is going to be in by the end of the month. So it's live.
Right.
Which is a really cool town.
I mean, that's kind of like the direction that our developers need to go. I mean, there's discussions all around here about microgrids and about autonomous, communities actually developing their own power, water, even food, and little, development areas like this. So these guys are they've been working on this for about 10 years or something or more. 2005.
They're opening. They're done building. So it's done.
But one of the notable characteristics of Babcock Ranch is that there is no storage.
No storage at all. They have all that solar, and they export.
They export to the grid.
Yeah.
If you've got a grid that can absorb all that power, it's fine. But if you look at places like Puerto Rico, sometimes the grid goes down, and it goes down for a long time. And so, place like Florida, I would expect that people would want to have a little bit more security than a wire.
With all the hurricanes.
With all the hurricanes and all
on.
that. So I'm off the grid, and I figured out what it takes to get off the grid. It's not that much. It's very straightforward. My ranch is off the grid on the Big Island. My house is off the grid in Honolulu. Both those cases were slightly different reasons. I wanted to study energy storage because I look at energy storage as being the answer to intermittent energy, and most renewable, like wind and solar, are intermittent, so you need to have a way to store it. So I thought, well, how hard can it be? And we talked to Helco, what an appropriate name for that company.
Oh man!
We talked to Helco about connecting to the grid and saying, we're going to put 100 kilowatts on our roof, and we want a grid tie because we're not going to have power at night, so on and so forth. And the first thing they asked me for was $30,000 to do an interconnect study. And an interconnect study is just a way for them to delay the project for a year or two. And then at the end, they can say, you know what, we need $100,000 to upgrade our substation to be able to. It's like, no, we're not doing that. So we went into looking for batteries. First ones we tried were vanadium redox flow batteries. They lasted for about a year. The company was bought by the Chinese. We never heard from them again. They stopped working. And I said, the next time we buy batteries from a company, it's going to be from a company that's still going to be around in 20 years. And we narrowed it down to two companies, Sony and Tesla. And we looked at both of those batteries, and we found out that Tesla actually has the chemistry that needs moving parts, and that has the overheating problem and so on. And overheating and then having to cool it down, those are all complicated things, when the Sony battery technology was no overheating, so no cooling part, nothing moving.
Yeah.
And so there's no way for them to overheat and actually catch on fire. So your Samsung, if your Samsung decides to catch on fire, you can find a bucket of water and dump it in the bucket, and it's fine. Even your Tesla, if your Tesla's going to burn down, it gives you a message, and you pull over and you get out, you watch it. But if you're in a house and you and your children are sleeping, if your battery starts going off in the garage, that's not a good situation. So for stationary applications, I think that safety outweighs 0 to 60 speed. We don't need that kind of stuff in a residence. So the Sony batteries are a little bit heavier and take up a little more space, so they're not going to end up in your phone, they're not going to end up in your car, but they will end up in your house.
Right. Yeah, lithium iron phosphate is the chemistry.
Lithium iron
and
phosphate.
really high quality lithium iron phosphate is kind of that distinction, right? So it really has the longevity, the power, and the safety. So that's exciting stuff.
Yeah. So we've Sony, which is no longer Sony because Sony sold that division to Murata, which is another huge company in Japan that makes iPhone parts. And that's where they make all their money. 30 of the parts inside of your phone are made by Murata anyway. So they've tested these things. First they told us 20 years, like 8,000 cycles, but now they've cycled them for 14,000 cycles. A cycle being from 0 to 100. And when we do a residential install, we look at a daily cycle. So one cycle, the sun shines, you fill up your battery to 100%, you use it all up during the night, goes down to zero, or not actually zero. You have to build a little bit extra, but and we're comfortable that will happen. That will work for at least 20 years, if not 30 years, because they cycle it 100%. Down to zero, and your house never goes down to zero. So you add that to battery life. It's a long time.
That's a long time. And we were talking with Kyle the other day at our MSP, Maui Solar Project sales meeting, and he stopped by and he was kind of briefing us on some of the technology, getting the guys up to speed on it. And and he said something to me. He said a lot of great things. Brilliant guy, by the way. Great stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So he said a lot of amazing things, but he was talking about how basically like you don't want to buy. It's not like you're going to buy a new battery system when it's trendy, the next one. You want something that's going to be stable, set it, forget it, live with it. You don't have to worry about it. It's not the kind of thing like a phone. I got to get a new phone every 3 years or something. You're going to want something that can last. And a lot of the systems out there, the technologies that are out there, don't really have the prospect for the longevity that this particular chemistry does. That's a pretty distinguishing characteristic.
So when people think battery, they think about the little things that you put in your flashlight. And that is one way to think of a battery, but the batteries that we're talking about are significantly bigger. And so when we're talking about somebody who's been off-grid for the last 10 or 20 years, they're using lead-acid batteries. These things are heavy and massive, and what happens to them is you have to bring in some pretty strong guys to remove them. And where do they go? They go to Mexico, and the lead is recovered by kids with sledgehammers. It's horrible.
There's a lot of wrong in that fact.
There's lead and there's acid. Both of those things are nasty, and you can't just throw them out. You've got to recycle them into something, and they're being recycled, but they're being recycled in a very horrible situation. Wow. So when we looked into our battery chemical lithium iron phosphate, we asked Sony, so what do we do with it? What's the end of life? Do we give them back to you and you reuse them? I said, no, you can just dispose of them, because lithium, iron, and phosphate are all benign chemicals. So if they end up in a landfill, it's no big deal. Nothing's going to happen. I mean, we use phosphate for growing vegetables. I don't know what we use lithium besides batteries, but still, it's
that's a little bit of a question right now. Is that there's such a demand on lithium because of this battery ramp, regardless of chemistry. Wouldn't you want to harvest that back anyway?
I don't know. I'm not a chemist, so I don't know how much right. actual lithium is inside a battery.
My gut says yes, you would.
Yeah,
that's the answer.
Well, it looks like we've moved into some of this good content, but let's wrap up our Hawaii-based news, and then we're going to jump right back into some great questions for Henk.
Sure.
So what do we got here, Jay? Something's going on with NSYNC again. These guys can't get out of the news here in Hawaii.
And NSYNC are doing all sorts of stuff. So NSYNC is actually, they just signed a PPA. We talked about PPAs before. It's a power purchase agreement. So NSYNC is building the actual equipment and will sell power at a discounted rate to our Polynesian Cultural Center, which is fantastic. So a 396 kilowatt photovoltaic and inverter system will reduce the facility's kilowatt hour rate, bringing an estimated savings of $43,000 in the first year alone. Thank you.
Nice job, NSYNC. These guys are doing a lot of business. They got those super modules, I think they're called, in containers. So there's some kind of really good stuff going on, and I'm really glad to see it. This is probably the fourth or fifth NSYNC project of note.
Yeah, they're super active here, and I would thank you so much, NSYNC, for being out here and doing stuff.
and so it's great with NSYNC, and whole other subsidiaries probably engaged in that too. And then we have what's going on here in Maui. We're going to talk a little bit more about in a second, but we have the Hilt Buy Back the Beach dinner. The luau happening at the old Lahaina Luau, and I talked with Angela, and she said I have to share that they are sold out. They're sold out, so which is a great thing. And Henk's going to tell us all about that, because he is their honoree this year, the champion of the land. That's some big stuff, Henk.
I frankly speaking, I know that I'm invited, but I don't know much about the event itself.
It's a good time. We're going to learn all about it.
Really
Okay, shall we go right into our commercial run, and we'll pick up with Henk
on
the way out?
Yep. Hear from our sponsors. Thank you.
Aloha, and welcome to Maui Solar Project. It is easy to feel rejuvenated just stepping outside on a magnificent Hawaiian day. Maui Solar Project is here to help harness that energy you feel in your body and use it to power your homes and businesses. As lore tells us, Maui harnessed the sun so as to slow its path across the sky. Join Maui Solar Project as we harness the sun's energy and slow Hawaii's dependence on fossil fuels. Call Maui Solar Project at 269-2352. MauiSolarProject.org.
Tabuchi Electric, a leading worldwide inverter manufacturer, presents the second generation of the eco-intelligent battery system, the IBIS. Tabuchi's grid-friendly system includes a high-efficiency inverter, stackable batteries, and integration with Jelly software for the most adaptable battery storage system on the market. The system is optimized for energy management and cost performance. Maximize your solar investment with Tabuchi's electric eco-intelligent battery system.
The Sonnen Battery Eco is an energy storage solution that utilizes intelligent energy management software. The system is available in a variety of storage capacities and allows for expansion. Sonnen Battery Eco allows you to save money by harvesting energy from your solar PV system and using that stored energy when rates are more expensive. Sonnen Battery Eco is specifically designed to provide you and your family peace of mind in the event of power outage. Our unique power detection system will sense outages in real time and automatically switch over to battery power. See Sonnen Battery Eco at sonnen-battery.com.
MIT founded Pika Energy, makers of the Pika Energy Island, a smart energy management system that uses solar panels, lithium batteries, and intelligence to manage your energy and keep you powered even during outages. With a clean, intelligent alternative to grid power, you're in control of your energy future. Pika's Energy Island lets you manage electrical costs with HECO-ready self-supply functions. Pika's largest battery, the Harbor Plus, offers 16 kilowatt hours of stored energy and can power loads of up to 10 kilowatts. And if you need more capacity, just add a second or even third Harbor Smart battery to the same system for a maximum of 48 kilowatt hours of usable storage. Pika Energy, own your power. To learn more, visit pika-energy.com.
Okay, well, those are our wonderful sponsors that help keep the SolarCoaster on the air.
Thank you again. We're always riding the rails because of you guys.
Thank you.
Again, hold your calls for Henk until the end of the show, 242-7800. Again, 242-7800 is the number. The last 15 minutes we'll be able to get you on the air. I had a question right away, and we talked a little bit about this before the show. It's too many parallels in our lives. But how did you get from entertainment software into renewables? I mean, my story is convoluted, so I don't know how long this is going to take, but briefly.
Briefly, I sold my company. It was called Blue Lava Wireless for lots of money, and a month later I found myself in the back of an ambulance looking up and saying, "You got to be kidding me. I haven't spent any of the money yet."
Oh, man, a month after that?
It was a month after that, 100% blockage of the widowmaker, which is the largest artery in your heart. And the second thing I said, no, I'm not going. I still have stuff to do. And so in the next couple of weeks, they wouldn't let me go back to work, obviously. I just had a heart attack. And I found my missions in life. I thought, what did I mean by stuff? And I have 4 missions in life. And the first one came to me still in the hospital, and it was like an article in the back of the newspaper saying, "Oh, by the way, we're going to kill all the coral in the world by the end of the century." I'm like, no, we're not. That is stupid. That is like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Coral is the basis for 25% of all the species in the ocean. It's the basis for surfing, for Christ's sakes. And I mean, like, duh. And there are lots and lots of islands that are made out of coral, that wouldn't exist in the future if all the coral in the world went away. And that's just the stuff that we're measuring. It's the calcium that's being broken down by carbon dioxide. And guess what? Plankton need calcium too. And so if we're taking out like a whole set of species of plankton, we don't know what that's going to cause, what kind of collapse of the ocean ecosystem. And we depend on the ocean. 70% of the ocean is...
Whether or not you've seen it in your lifetime
whether
doesn't
you know
matter.
it or not, you're dependent on the ocean. We came from the ocean. So we cannot just like stand by and let this happen. We got to do something about it. So mission number 1 is to end the use of carbon-based fuel. I've got 3 other missions. We can talk about that on another show.
We're not going to hear the rest of them?
Oh, gosh. If you're like killing
4
me.
or 5 missions we're hearing about.
Okay.
Give us the bullet points if you want.
The bullet points, number 2 is to end war, and it's not because people die, because like in the 13 years that we've been in Afghanistan, we lost, 2,000 something people, and that's the same number of people that died on Omaha on D-Day in one day. We lost 400,000 people in World War II, and we lost 2,000 people. And it's not the same thing. People are not dying. And that's why people are not feeling like we're at war, because it's not like everybody knows somebody who just died.
Yeah,
this is a really interesting point here.
It's about money. It's about money. And if we were serious with our money about solving the energy situation or the carbon situation, we could do it. In World War II, we went from biplanes to jet planes. We invented sonar, radar. We invented the freaking atom bomb. And like when it's our existence, our way of life that's at stake, we do incredible things, and we can do them in 5 years. And today, if we had that 5 years and that the equivalent amount of money, we should be able to solve all of the problems related to climate change in the next 5 years. We just don't feel like we're at war. We just don't feel like the emergency is there. That's the issue.
I have to jump in right there on number 2. So we'll just hold a placeholder there for a moment. But Americans don't have that kind of feeling, I think, of being at war, right? That sense of the potential.
Your way of life is not
right?
yet at risk.
And I had a lot of experience working in the Peace Boat organization in my 20s, and I met hibakusha, or the victims of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and I heard them tell their stories, and that was really a profound experience for a young man in his 20s, young American from New Jersey in his 20s, and I was like, well, this is really different, and this Saturday, we all thought for about 8 or 10, 15 minutes, whatever it was, that we were in the middle of a similar thing.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I went and made myself a cup of coffee. And first of all, the North Koreans have managed to hit an ocean so far. and hitting a specific target, like a dot in the ocean, is very different from hitting an ocean. You could say, oh, I did it. Well, what did you just do? I hit an ocean. Well, okay, that's different from hitting a Y. So capability is first thing. And second is, I should turn on my phone and get all kinds of news from all over the place. You got to have second and third sources for that kind of thing. So you
didn't have that feeling.
Yeah, that was
okay.
mine. I was driving through town. I went into town early morning. My parents had some guests, so I went into Homemade and got some marasadas for everybody. And I was heading out of town, and of course I got the message, and I'm looking, and the sirens are right there, and they're not going off, and nobody else is freaking out on the roadway.
Crazy time.
I drove home.
But I mean, I think the point that I think that's there is that people felt for a moment, a lot of people felt for a moment, that there was the potential for this to be a real thing.
Right.
And that changes perspective, or maybe does it change perspective?
Yeah, I think it does. I think that people are more aware of what's going on between the U.S. and some rogue nation, and basically, we can rightly so feel that we're actually egging them on by calling them names and saying we're going to destroy you, and things like that make them. We have been promoters of regime change in a number of countries. We've regime changed Afghanistan, we've regime changed Iraq, and we're in the process of regime changing Syria. And all these places where we're changing the regime. So other people, other places are watching us do that and say, well, how are we going to survive this? How are we going to survive the U.S. coming after us? And the North Korean answer is, well, we just got to be as badass as they are. We're going to have our own nukes. So you could say that because we have been doing this regime change all over the planet, they're like backed into a corner and they're kind of forced into the ridiculous things that they're doing. Not saying they're right. I'm just saying that that's the reason that they're doing it.
Yeah, it's a scary time in a sense, and when I think about, I think one of your discussion points is really focusing in on Keiki, right, on the children, and when I think about our children having to live in that kind of conversation, hits me really hard.
I kind of grew up during the Cold War, so I mean, it's not like we haven't had that conversation before, and everybody's like their finger was almost on the button a number of times during the Cold War. And we managed to survive it because, mutually assured destruction doesn't really work. It's not in anybody's interest. And I just don't think it's going to. I don't believe somebody's going to be dumb enough to push that button for real.
Okay.
Because it's a suicide. It's a guaranteed suicide.
Okay. So we're on number 2. What was number 3?
Number 3 is to make a backup of life on Earth. And you could say one of the ways of looking at it is like, okay, 65 million years ago, the dinosaurs went away. Why? Because they were too stupid to get off planet. They were all here.
No fault of their own.
They were all here when a relatively small rock hit Earth. And if we look at the lunar record, I just came back from a moon conference, and the things that struck the moon, especially around 3.8 billion years ago, were much bigger than the dinosaur killer. So historically, we've had much bigger events than the dinosaur killer event. And we haven't identified all of the rocks that could hit us going forward. So it's an accident waiting to happen. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is like we are on a path of self-destruction. We're the ones who are destroying our own environment that we need to survive in. So, you could say that, so what are the extinction events that could wipe humans or life or mammals, off the surface of the planet? And the answer is there's lots. But if we are on another planet as well, that probability goes down almost to zero. And so we need to, I come from the computer game business. You make backups. If my programmer came to me and said, I've been working on this game for like a year and I just lost all my data because my hard disk got fragged and I don't have a backup, I said, you idiot, you're so fired.
Yep.
And so, so here, we as a species should be fired because we're still all here after having been to the moon 50 years ago. So the moon is the next logical step. It's only 3 days away by 1960s technology. And when we move to the moon and Mars, to survive there, we will have to learn how to be sustainable. Because there is no such thing as throwing out the garbage on the moon or Mars. It's $1 million a kilo to send something to the moon. Maybe an order of magnitude more to send something to Mars. So you would not like throw something out that it's too valuable. Everything has to be repurposed into something else. Every container has to be 3D printed into something else that's useful on the moon base. And so what we're actually doing is we're learning how to live within our means. Energy, food, everything has to be recycled. There's no such thing as garbage. You're not leaking anything into the vacuum of space. It's all important.
There's a learning opportunity.
And that's how we have to live here. We have to learn how to live there to live back here. And you could say solar panels, and we're on a radio show about solar panels. They were invented to have satellites survive in space because they didn't have another source of energy. So we don't even know all the things that are going to be invented for survival on the moon and Mars, but they will all be useful for survival here.
So yeah, that's amazing. So we were just reading this morning about that
the
10 kilowatt
reactor,
nuclear reactor they're trying to utilize.
That's still a fission device, but yes.
Yeah, so that may not be the right direction to go. And number 4, right?
Number 4. I have 4 kids, 4 missions. I kind of loosely thought that each of my kids would pick up one of my missions. It's so not happening. Mission number 4, and I tried to get rid of this mission a number of times, and I asked people smarter than me, can I just get rid of this mission? And they said, no, you thought of it, it's yours. And so number 4 is to figure out how the universe ends and do something about it.
Keep the universe from ending? Keep it from ending.
No, see, it's do something about it. I think what we have done as human beings is we've doubled our expected age that we, before we die. We used to get 40 and we die. Now we get 80 and we die. So if the universe was going to end in like 1 billion years or whatever, if we can make that double, that would be awesome. And we would have made a difference in the universe. I mean, our existence wouldn't have been just a waste of space.
So humanity contributes to the universe.
Contributes to the universe.
Got it.
I'm saying it's us, but we and the aliens have to work together on this. And so
I'm going to need a noodle on that one a little bit. That's a good one, though. I like it. All right, we have Kyle.
Sounds like a theme for a role-playing game.
We got Kyle Bolger in studio today. Kyle, welcome.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. You're a SolarCoaster veteran.
Veteran, yeah.
Right?
I've been here once before.
Right.
Yeah. Super glad to be back. Thank you.
Do appreciate it.
And a shining staff member of Blue Planet Energy, right? Are you the CTO?
I am the VP of Engineering.
VP of Engineering.
Yeah.
Got it. So we got some cool kind of technical-oriented questions coming up, too. Jay, you want to jump into the hybridization of the grid stuff? Does that sound about right at this point?
Yeah, let's look at the clock real quick.
Yeah, we're good. 43.
Okay. So what number are you?
Okay, yeah.
Sorry,
so we're talking about the one of the questions that one of the things that we're really into. There's a lot of great stuff we're into, but one of the things we're into is this notion of the hybridization of the grid. And there's this organization called Emerge Alliance out there, and they're talking about the relationship, the current AC grid. Can we utilize DC maybe at the grid edge in a way to make our generation and consumption more efficient? I'm wondering what you think about that stuff. We dig it. Brian Patterson, we interviewed him at SBI.
Very, very interesting guy. The nanograde conversation is what really strikes at me. I mean, his phrase, which we keep bringing up, is that he's got this lovely garden of technology in his house. He's got like 500 devices, and he's watering it with a fire hose.
His AC coming in from the grid, right?
120 volts AC. Everything runs on 5, 3.3, 1.8 volt. All these little microprocessors. The only big things out there left are the compressor motors. And those can and probably should be DC as well, because even those are they're doing their inversion internally from the AC. There's no reason to have AC. All the lighting in my house is 12 volts. Each and every one of them has a transformer up there, which is obscenely wasteful because they're all baking.
Really talking about efficiencies, right?
Yeah,
So because we're talking about generating from renewable energies now. We're consuming in a really vastly inefficient manner, right? Are there opportunities from your perspective to kind of optimize that through something like hybridization of the grid?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you said the grid edge. I think there's a lot of opportunities. I don't think there is a silver bullet. I think there's going to be a lot of different solutions for different applications out there. And it is a little ironic that most of our appliances run on DC, yet we are transmitting AC all over the country. But you know, the way the grid was developed was sort of a backwards engineering and policy nightmare to get to where we are today.
You were just telling us about that book, The Grid, right?
Yeah, that's a really interesting book called The Grid by Gretchen Bakke. I think I might have said her last name correctly. Really fascinating story about how we got into the situation we are with the grid. Ultimately, I'm not quite through the book, but it seems like we have a really fragile grid. Right, it was built for one thing, and now we're using it for many, many other reasons and other things. So, yeah, fixing it is going to be one house at a time. You could become more efficient. You could become a producer. You could become a storer of energy, which is, of course, why we like the idea of batteries so much. Being something that can absorb energy as well as release energy could really have profound effects on how we operate the grid and how the transaction takes place between the utility company and the customer. So, yeah, there's going to be an exciting future with it.
Yeah. So if you go back in time, there were these things called landlines, and you know, every house had a landline, and so today everybody uses cell phones, and like, we were trying to figure out, well, should we keep our landline or not? And the answer is no. We don't need our landline for anything. There's no reason for us to have a landline because everything comes through the cell, and that is kind of similar to you know, the energy that we can produce in a home, because your home can produce the energy right there, and then you're no longer like dependent on a landline. And that the landline is a point of vulnerability, especially if all the landline come together into one wire. And we can see what happens during a hurricane by looking at what happened in Puerto Rico. The future of electricity is that every house should be producing its own. If it produces a little too much, then it can distribute to the neighbors or get some from the neighbors, and that's how you get a little extra energy when you need it.
Yeah, that's a great kind of comparison, right? I hadn't thought about that before, actually.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Cell phones are something we're all comfortable with now. I myself don't have a landline, and I don't even think about it.
You don't even think about it.
Which is, yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thanks for that. Jay, you want to pick one next?
Yeah, real quick. We had a mutual friend on the coaster recently, Yoshoka Tatsuya from Peace Boat and EcoShip. Are you familiar? Yeah.
Familiar.
Your battery technology is really, really interesting. We started talking about that before. Is that a candidate for the
storage
storage on the ship? That would be a really interesting project, I would see.
Interesting project. So the question is, where are you going to get your energy to store? You know, you can't probably cannot store enough energy for an entire voyage by docking somewhere. You need to have a source of energy, whether it be wind or solar, and then there's the footprint that you have on a ship relative to how much energy you need. And so I'm not the engineer to figure that out, but it looks to me like you would need more surface area than the top of a ship to run a ship.
Definitely.
Especially if you only got it energy half the time.
Definitely.
And the same thing with wind. You know, I sailed on Hokulea, by the way, and and it's great when the wind is at your back, you're like kicking butt. But then there was, and in the last time we sailed to from Tahiti to Hawaii, it was 18 days. It was a record. But if you go back in time, there was a time when there was an 18-day where there was no wind at all, and they were stuck in the middle of the ocean for 18 days doing nothing. And so I don't think that container ships can afford to be in the middle of the ocean doing nothing for 18 days.
Right, absolutely. So some of the other technologies, as we understand it, are LNG is a transitionary from diesel to full autonomy at one point. No go, right?
No.
Okay.
No, we're
not a
getting
big fan of LNG. And then the notion.
It's not a bridge; it's a pier.
Right. Well, we had this thing happen in Hawaii, right? You
It's
walk
not
off
a
the
bridge;
pier.
it's a pier.
Just walk off
We
the
can
end.
build
There's
this
no
pier,
other
but
side
at
to
the end of the day, we're going to walk off the end of that pier.
So
the answer to
dead-end
that,
technology.
the answer to that is, and I'm playing with it, is hydrogen.
Hydrogen. That's where we're going. Yeah.
So basically, we can take all of our excess hydrogen, because right now half of our energy that we produce on solar farms and wind farms in Hawaii is curtailed.
Yep.
How can we justify curtailing energy when we spend $5 billion a year on oil? That makes no sense at all. We should take all of the extra energy, turn it into hydrogen. We can use it for ground transportation, and we can even use it for ship transportation.
So if you got a megawatt, so we got 17% of carbon emissions are from the maritime industry, according to what we've been able to figure out, right? So that's a pretty significant chunk, and there's a lot of particulates.
It's all dirty
and
fuel, yeah.
Are you talking about the world or the
Worldwide.
country?
Worldwide.
Yeah.
Equivalent roughly to Germany.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we understand. So,
Yeah.
and the hydrogen conversation is really where this is all headed, right? So if you can have solar sails, you can have a couple of megs of NREL transparent solar wrapping the ship, and then you can have hydrogen-based drives and whatever amount of storage you need to kind of work the rest of the systems. I think that's the direction it's heading in.
Yeah.
Someone once called it the Tesla of the oceans. So that's kind of what we're hearing right now.
Yeah. There's definitely a place for hydrogen. Definitely. It may not be primary storage because the round trip isn't as efficient as a battery. We get like 97% efficiency. 97% of the energy we put into our batteries comes back. But if it's hydrogen, it's more like 50-60%.
Right. 53
so you
was
have
the last number I had.
Yeah, it depends on who's talking. But if the energy that is used to produce the hydrogen is free, if it's like extra energy.
We're blowing it off or
Yeah.
storing it. Which
All
would you
right.
rather do? You want to completely waste it or at least get 53% back?
Yeah.
My daughter's doing a project on that very topic at school right now.
Excellent. We're inspiring the KK.
I want to jump right over to politics a little bit because we just had we were lucky enough to have an interview with Mayor Arakawa yesterday. About 40 minutes, supposed to be a 10-minute interview. It was stretched out to 40. Really robust conversation.
Yep.
We haven't aired that episode yet, but we are going to be talking to the mayoral candidates as well. And, Hawaii is an environment where we're kind of leading the way. And when you think, in some respects, SIA President Abigail Ross Hopper says, hey, we look to you for a template for the rest of the country. So do you have any advice or suggestions or things you would say to the
Say or
up-and-coming, or ask to the up-and-coming mayoral candidates? El Cochran, Guzman, Victorino, these guys are all shooting for it.
Yeah, it's about leadership, guys. A leader isn't just somebody who listens to all the people and does what they want them to, because people don't always know the answer. So leaders have to take leadership, and they have to figure out what the answer is, and then convince the rest of the people that that's the way forward. And the way forward is energy independence. We just cannot afford to spend $5 billion a year on oil. That's taxation without representation. We've been through that. It's the reason that our cost of living is higher than any place else, and it's the reason that our salaries are lower than any place else. I mean,
So much wealth is being exported.
It's just, and we get nothing for it. Well, we get energy for it, but I mean, energy should be here at 5 cents per kilowatt hour or 10 cents per kilowatt hour. That's where it is in other states. Why aren't we doing that? And the reason is because we're dependent on oil, and there's some forces that are how can I say, that exist in this state that like to keep it that way. They're making money off of it. So politician is going to have to be able to stand up to the powers that be, so to speak. The electric company, the oil companies, the refineries, all those people are, they're fighting for their existence in Hawaii. And frankly speaking, I think they've made enough money out of Hawaii already.
Agreed. One of the things that we got out of our conversation with Mayor Arakawa was this notion of wheeling. And apparently there's some legislation moving forward towards wheeling right now. I'm not sure the actual dockets, but your organizations have been really instrumental in community solar. You've been instrumental in NEM and in establishing the 2045 goals. Mayor Arakawa, 100% renewable energy goals, not only in Hawaii, but also throughout the nation. That's kind of been ripple effects throughout the nation. So, I mean, thank you, right? That's just remarkable.
Yeah, big thank you.
And but one of the things that kind of blew my mind when I was talking with Mayor Arakawa yesterday, when we were talking to him, he said 5 years. Establish wheeling, and we'll have 100% renewable in 5 years. We haven't aired this episode yet. He just said
that's
that.
That's a direct
We were
quote.
like, really?
Yeah.
He goes, yeah. He goes, we could do it right now. We need a couple of core things, and wheeling is one of them.
Yep.
Yeah, so the reason that we have wheeling in the first place, or that we're not allowed to do wheeling, which is we're not allowed to take electricity from one TMK, a property, to a neighboring property, is that we gave that right to the monopoly to the electric company a long time ago. Right. And it's so that the electric company would service remote locations, because otherwise they would just like power Honolulu and Lahaina and a couple of places, and they would make all their money. But by giving them a monopoly, saying, okay, well, you get a monopoly, but in exchange you have to draw lines to all these outlying places. That reasoning doesn't exist anymore. It's cheaper for an outlier to go off grid than to be connected to the grid. So the whole reasoning for wheeling in the first place the whole reasoning for the monopoly in the first place, that's gone. And we've been living under, I don't know, 100 years or whatever it is since the electric company got started. That reasoning is no longer valid.
You answered my question this morning.
It's time for us to move on.
So we could have someone like generating in Kihei, for example, and moving that energy up to Haiku where it's raining. Is that what we're talking about with wheeling? Across TMKs, across zones?
No, it's even simpler than that. It's like me, if I have solar and I can't even send it to my neighbor.
Right.
Right next door. You know, we're not talking about long distances.
So we're talking about right next
if
to each
I have
other.
2 pieces of property, I own both of them. I can't do that.
Gotcha.
It doesn't make
Can't cross the property line.
Can't cross property lines.
Real quick, I want to say we're going to open the phone lines right now. If you have a question for Henk, certainly do give us a call.
Oh, great.
242-7800 is the number.
Okay. We'll see if we get some calls in here. So which one do you want to jump on next, sir?
Well, we've only got 3 minutes left.
Okay. Well, we got a couple. I know there's something special happening. A mutual friend, Graham Hill, has the Life Edited Maui house. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
It's an awesome house. It's people have got. It's psychologically shown that if the bigger your house, the more messed up you and your family will be. Because people, it's the distance between people. So the theory here is that you reduce the distance between people by having everybody living in a smaller house. And the smaller house means less energy. It's more efficient in every way. I lived in Japan for 18 years. We live in small houses.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that hard.
Vertical.
There's something special about being close-knit with your family. I get it. So this is the Life Edited Maui house. We're going to hear more about that soon. We have a caller, Gary?
Yep.
We do.
All
Aloha, right. Welcome to the Solar Coaster. Thanks so much for calling in. Who's this? Whoop. We lost him. We'll see if we get him back. It's going to have to be fast. Okay, so what I want to really know is, what is your wish list for, I know you want to talk about the lunar base a little bit, right? You want to share with us what's going on there?
A little bit. So my interest in mission number 3, I believe Hawaii is the perfect place to build a lunar base analog. That means that we can practice living in a moon base. The materials that Hawaii has made geologically is the same as the materials on the moon, almost the same. So it's a great place to practice. So rather than have it be in Texas or California or in Florida, let's have the next wave of billion-dollar industry going to space be based in Hawaii.
Give our kids a reason to come back and work in this environment, right? Okay, we got it.
All right,
we
got our phone caller back.
All right. Yeah,
Jerry, you're pushing the wrong button there.
Not Gary.
You must be calling from a landline.
They're embarrassed. Yeah, landline. Nice.
Oh, just calling my cell phone.
Okay, here it is.
Okay.
Are we back? Hello. Aloha. Welcome to the Solar Coaster.
I hear
us.
It's a record.
Well,
yeah, welcome to the coaster. Hello.
Oh, here echoes.
I don't think it's going to work out this time. Sorry, we'll have to get that question out to you later.
You're going to have to come back next week.
Is there anything that you want to kind of put forward that we haven't covered? I mean, you're being honored at the Hawaiian Island Land Trust dinner on Saturday. Big shout out to those guys, to everybody at Hill. It's going to be a fun event.
All I want to say is hang in there. We're getting close to the solution, and we're all part of the solution. This isn't something that is going to be done by Washington. It's going to be done by us. And we're here to create the future for our children and our grandchildren. It's up to us, nobody else. Nobody's going to help us on this. We got to do this thing.
Absolutely.
Wise words.
Yeah, I think when we think about our kids, that's the kind of thing that can really stir your and really kind of get you.
That's a primal instinct for sure. I mean, I have my 3. They're actually all in Japan right now, but no place better in the world to raise small children than right here. Let's make them stay.
Join the Blue Planet Energy team, right? Our family here. We've got so many people that are going completely grid independent, right? Or grid defection, whatever term you prefer. And the reality is the utility companies just aren't working with us as fast as we need to move. And so if you want to help promote this, revolution in energy consumption and reducing your carbon-based fuels, just go do it yourself. Wow. Get off grid and show them that they don't really have the right to dictate your life, right? And the more of us that can do that will encourage them, hopefully in a much more effective way, to start playing nicely with us, and then we'll go back to that grid interaction, right? We'll be able to really work together as a community.
I feel you on that.
They're really dragging their heels. We gotta speed them up. Let's do this.
Maybe it's not time to be patient, gentlemen.
Yep, that's right.
Yep. Right? All right. Hey, can't thank you enough, Henk Rogers from Blue Planet Foundation, Blue Planet Energy, and a bunch of other great organizations. Hawaiian Island Land Trust, Champion of the Land, here on the Solar Coaster.
That's the best title.
And Kyle Bulger, thank you very much. You're a brilliant guy. Really appreciate having you at the show. Solar Anthony, Jonah Heller, thank you, boys, gentlemen, and Gary Forsberg, everybody, thank you.
If you're on the YouTube, hit like and subscribe. Do appreciate it.
All right. Aloha Friday, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Aloha.
Aloha.